What's up, swing traders? Snacks here. We're going to jump into our watch list for Thursday, September 25th. And as always, we'll jump in here and start with a little bit of market breadth. So we're getting a little bit of a pullback here, but nothing of major concern at the moment, right? We're really just testing the short-term moving average. So a hold of that and a push back up towards highs, I'd say that would be, maybe a green light to put on a couple positions. But I do want to see how we react before we go adding too much. And then we've got RSP here, still holding that prior all-time high level, really been consolidating now for a few weeks, right? So we'd like to see this breakout, obviously to the upside. I'd love to see that. If we do break down, I want to see how it acts off of the 50. If we recover very quickly, then I think it could be like a shake and go scenario. And then we've got tech here bouncing off of the 9. So again, if we can hold this and start to curl up back towards high, then I would say right now we're in a market risk C. I just got to stay there, and there is a reason. There's apparently a 6% chance of a government shutdown now. So yet another macro event sort of helping us to stall out here at highs. I did a bit of research. Let's go ahead and jump into that. I looked at the last 10 government shutdowns, and in my opinion, I can't really say one way or the other, right? So here was one here, December 18th. It was actually the marker of a bottom, also bouncing off a structure, but the first trading day, I think it happened on Saturday back then. Let me go ahead and pull up the dates here. But I'm pretty certain that was a Saturday that this one started. Yeah, December 22nd, 2018. It was a Saturday that it started. So the first trading day was a Monday. I'm on the weekly chart. I'm going to stay here, right? But the first, it went straight up, right? And then you had another one here where it was sort of the marker of a top. And so in this one, we were pulling back to the 200 day, had a government shutdown. Everybody probably thought like this was going to be a reason to crack, go into a sustained bear market, and actually it was a marker of the bottom. And then this is a bit of an opposite here. We were at all-time highs, and it did help us in rolling over. And then, I've got more in here, and like I said, I can't really find statistical significance either way. Like sometimes it was short-term sell pressure, and sometimes it was really a dip buy opportunity if there was any dip at all. But, look, guys, I can't really say one way or the other based on the prior shutdowns that I was able to look at, right? So what we're going to have to do is what we always do is read the room, right? Day-to-day price action, we're going to have to read the room and keep an eye on market breadth. So as long as we are over the 9, we're very strong. As long as we're over the 50, I think we are very strong. A pullback to it back in this gray zone would not scare me off too much. So we'll jump in and do our watch list today. We actually do have quite a bit to look at because, we've had a couple day pullbacks, so we're having some of our focus list reset. Guys, the link to this focus list, the strongest stocks in the market, in trend, respecting structure, backed by growing fundamentals, the stocks you want to be playing continuation patterns in, which we have been in for the last 6 months. And for anyone who wonders how often we are in trend, the answer is usually. Okay? We are usually in a trend, and we are clearly in one now. So that is why 5 out of 6 of my models are continuation patterns on the leaders. Okay, as long as we can identify that we are in a trend, then every time the leaders go onto sale, we want to look for positioning, okay, from Wall Street and put them at our backs, get us back onto trend and ride up to recent or new highs. Guys, let's just jump into the watch list here. We've got FUTU. Yesterday was maybe the day we should have taken this, right? I was looking at this live with Bootcamp. We did our first live trading session, and I was a little hesitant on it just because of some of the way the market was acting just a bit. But frankly, I think I should have had my eye a little bit more on FXTI, which looks like it didn't have that strong of a close. I'm in Thailand, so by this time I was already asleep. But FXTI was ripping just before FUTU, so I think we had an entry here on FUTU, but I'm not mad at missing it. We're looking for a much bigger move. The idea here in FUTU is, of course, our RRR setup first is a leader in a trend backed by growing fundamentals. Respecting structure, we look for a retracement reaction at or around our level and a remount of the short term. But here on FUTU, we've got some other things. We've got a long-term cup and handle playing out, right? We've got strength coming into the China sector. So we've got some other things to the upside that could pull us. But, at the end of the day, we certainly have plenty of room still for our 2-to-1, which is what we like out of the RRR setup, and we use options for leverage up over 180% on the year. Obviously, we can still realize significant gains, and that is still within my risk profile. I break my portfolio into 10 units and never put on more than 5 to 6 units at a time. So with risk management that allows me to sleep at night, and by using options we can still realize very significant gains without ever being fully exposed to macro events, really is what I would call it, right? I can sleep at night is what that allows in options. Again, is the leverage that allows us to realize significant gains. But anyways, guys, what I'm looking for here is maybe a clear of yesterday's high, okay? So we had our triple R trigger, right? So maybe an inside day would be beautiful, right? But if we do breach yesterday's high, I'll be watching that price action, and my stop would be somewhere, maybe yesterday's low. I don't see any reason to get back below that. I don't think we need to breach the, there's no reason for me to allow it to go and breach the lows there, the recent swing low. If we get through yesterday's low, I would probably clear out of that, and then we would be looking for all-time highs if we were to do that. So not quite all-time highs, but testing around the all-time high level, right? But I think we've got plenty of time before the next earnings. It's certainly a trade I see that could happen. And I would love to maybe even reach for a 3-to-1 just in case we do break that level. So I think that's a trade I like there on FUTU. Something we'll have to be dynamic in the moment, and if we need to take a 2-to-1, if the market happens to roll or something like that, then we'll do so. Guys, if I get a move towards target and I'm at 1R, I'm at break even at that point. I don't ever lose on those trades, right? So I start getting dynamic with my stop once we get to 1R. And I try to let them ride out, and it's something that I need to look into a bit more at the end of the year as I pull all my data and look at my year, right? So you would think 180%, 188 or no, 86% yesterday at close, or this morning when I woke up. Anyways, over 180% on the year, right? You would think that there's nothing to change. It's fantastic returns, but I'm always looking to improve, right? There's always things I could be doing better, and I'm considering letting this triple R model, I'm considering changing it to a 3R model as opposed to a 2. I've got examples all over the place. I mean, look at every trade that we've taken on OCLO. I thought I took 3. Looks like only 2. But both the trades that I've taken on OCLO in the last 6 months, right, hit 3R. This one is absolutely insane. Let's see, Dash, I think all 4 or 5 trades I've taken on Dash this year have all hit on 2R, right? And I think most of them, if not all of them, would have hit 3R. So, I think I might need to look into it. I might need to consider moving it to a 3R model. We're hitting well over 70% at 2R money printer. I'm happy, but if I'm leaving money on the table, it's something I need to recognize and adjust possibly. Celsius is another one that we have been watching quite a while here, and we will continue to do so as it looks to get back over the 50. Over it and the 9 would be our trigger for triple R here, right? So we've got a strong company in a trend backed by growing fundamentals, retracement reaction at around our level, and remount of the 9 would be our trigger here on Celsius. And what else have we got here? And TEM is the shake and go setup here that I mentioned is on my radar. Bootcamp, we are going to be covering shake and go and gap down reversal next week. But I may be playing through this one live, so either I get into this before next week, or it's something that we're going to be able to look at live together. But guys, what we're looking for is a breakout, fake out, shake out, and a remount of the short-term moving average, and a pushback towards those levels is a shake and go setup. Put very simply, right? Come join Bootcamp if you would like a better explanation and to see a long list of examples and how powerful this can be on the leaders. All of our models are traded on the leaders. Okay, Nail is another attractive one here as we are testing the 200. Look at all this accumulation, right, that we've had, and we got up over the 200. We're pulling back, retesting it. Over the 9 on Nail, you got to take a swing at that. Reddit looks attractive. Okay, this guy is a runaway. I believe wow. Just broke up to all-time high, sort of getting maybe a shake and go here. Really more of a pullback. But anyways, guys, got a strong company in a trend backed by growing fundamentals, and we're getting a retracement reaction at around our level. Over the 9 would be a trigger for us here on Reddit, one of the strongest stocks in the market. Amazon remains on watch. We got a bit of a breakdown here over the 50 on Amazon. I'm taking a swing at that. It's the exact same setup. A little more shaky, I would say, than it was for me last year. That's not true. Not true. So it's still very mirrored price action. So you get a gap down reversal, the other model that we're going to cover next week in Bootcamp, guys, but you get an overreaction to earnings, a breach of the gap down high, right? And you look to get it right back onto trend and close the gap. And then that suggests that we're just going to get back on the trend and start playing continuation patterns into the future. That's what we did here last year on Amazon, and we also did align that with a rate cut cycle. So it's literally mirrored price action. When you see these kind of things, it pays to play them, right? I'm going to swing that bat over the 50 on Amazon. It's going to happen. AMD is another one that got a bit of a gap down on news of, I think it was Nvidia and Intel doing a partnership, and got a gap down that the market immediately bought back up. So guys, over the 50 AMD, you got to take a swing at that. It's a triple R setup, but we got another one of those things that, like, guys, the idea behind our triple R setups is we look for positioning in the pullback, right? We look for them to step in and defend a level. We look for the stock to go on sale. That's the retracement. And then we look for positioning, the reaction, and then we look for the remount, the confirmation. So the retracement, right, is coming off of this big trend, the real changing character in AMD, right? And we get our first real pullback, that's our retracement. We're getting our reaction at around our level, but we had another little that news event, right? But it was another opportunity to show positioning, right? It went on sale and they stepped in and bought it up. Okay, these are the things that we want to see in the leaders, because it suggests when this thing goes on sale, they step in, they buy it up, and they get it back onto trend. And it suggests that we're going to do just that, get back onto trend and test recent highs. And VST is another one here where we got a bit of a fake out on the breakout, a shakeout. I think a remount of the 9 is worth a look, especially a hold of the 50, right? If we get back over the 9, I think it's worth a look here on VST, AVGO. All right, so what I want to say about this one is you hear a lot of fill the gap, yeah, okay, sure, that happens. It's something you can play. If it does breach, it might fill this gap, absolutely. It's the opposite of the gap down reversal that I like to play. I like to play a gap down reversal too. Here's one right here, right? So we gap down and we breached it, you take that and it filled the gap, right? But what I want to say here is in the leaders, I don't want to see this gap fill. It's actually quite strong when the bears can't break it down below this gap, okay? It suggests that the bulls are in charge, they're in control. The bears can't even get it to breach and fill this gap. And if we get right back on the trend, if we remount the short-term moving average, I think this is attractive here on AVGO. DraftKings is one that I have been watching for a while now. I'd like to get into this for a box breakout play, right? But I'm starting to wonder, because Robinhood just took massive market share from them, I would say. Robinhood just introduced sports betting. I don't know if I like it so much with that news. I don't know. I think that my interest in this is fading just a little bit. I think they're going to lose market share to Robinhood, right? So not quite as strong as I had hoped there. Spotify is one that does look like it's basing below highs, right? We tried to push up, and I think back over the 9, this has a decent look to it. Not my favorite. ELF, we are getting a pretty decent pullback here. So here's a gap down reversal, right? Gap down reversal, right back onto trend. Now holding structure again, so we want to see that continue. So we're going to retest the 50 here. If we get a reaction at around our level, a remount of the short term, this is a green light on ELF for me. CRDO, one of the strongest stocks in the market. We're getting one of our first real pullbacks of this 6-month trend that we've been in. So let's see where we find strength, where they step in, and where the 9 is at that point. Wherever it is, I'm probably going to be interested in buying the remount of that 9. OUST is another that I'm interested in. Another leader recently in a hot sector. We're getting a pullback in semis, and I think this is a guy that might be putting in an IPO cycle, right? Just the beginning of that. We've got an obvious change of character on volume. So this is something that could be trending for a while, and we want to keep an eye on, and we talked about that the other day in Bootcamp, that on its way to doing that IPO cycle, there is a lot of trend or a lot of triple R triggers on the way. So we're getting a retest of the 50 here and back over the 9. I think we could take it with an idea of breaking out, right, and getting our 2-to-1. And ALAB is the last one we're going to look at here today. Big retracement, sort of on big volume, so a little concerning, but this is our first real pullback. And here's an example of a gap not filling. It may pull back and fill all that, but if it doesn't, okay, that would suggest that it is very strong. So let's see how this thing acts at the 50, and I think if it holds up, especially if it finds support here You know, in this prior consolidation zone, and that 50 is right below it, and the 9 comes down, and we remount that 9, guys, you got to buy that. You got to buy it. You got to swing that back, okay? So look, there's quite a bit beginning to set up. This is sort of what we were looking for, but we are still in a risk profile C. I don't know what's going on with this government shutdown. Let's see a little more information come in. We're not going to trade the headlines. We're going to read the room and read market breadth. And if we're strong in the markets, we got to take some trades. If the market does curl back up, as I said, bounce off of this 9, right, and start to curl back up towards high, then I got to say we're moving into a risk profile B, and I will be looking to put on a few positions.